Welcome back to the Win with Dice podcast, a podcast featuring members of the Win with Dice team, and this week, a guest. I'm joined here by Ramon, as always.
What's up, guys? My butt cheeks are clenched.
That's a reference that we'll maybe get to today, and
or maybe not. It'll be a mystery,
depending on how long our guest spot goes. Because we're also joined by Steven, so you can say hi.
Hey, how's it going?
So this podcast is mostly about tabletop RPGs, playing games, running games, and our experiences with them. Hopefully, we're able to pass along some useful advice, or at least entertaining story or two. As always, if you guys have some questions or comments you want to drop, there's the comment section below, or you can hit us up on Twitter and Facebook at Win with Dice.
Yeah, and also I keep forgetting to tell people why you should listen to us. We're experienced DMs. We've been playing tabletop games for a while now, and if you guys have any questions or just want to run something by us just to get our opinions on, just let us know. Reach out to us through all the means Calvin's just said, because I'm so good at this.
We also have a website, and the website has a like a comment form, so you can do that too if you're into that sort of thing. If you have something really long to say that won't fit in a tweet, go there.
I've never tweeted anything in my life, so I have no clue. I've received lots of tweets, and they're really nice.
Well, there you go.
Anyway, yeah, enough of this flim flam. We're here with our good friend Steven, our first guest ever on the Win with Dice podcast.
Yay!
Yeah, only
Yay!
like 17 episodes is this now?
I know.
Should I introduce myself?
Yeah.
Yeah,
sure.
man.
Let's just roll right into that. I guess we can. Should we say why Steven is here, or let's just have Steven do his introduction and then we'll talk about that as we go on?
Yeah,
So-
go ahead, Steven.
I think if memory serves, I was like one of our first DMs in our friend groups.
Yeah, pretty much.
Well, yeah, first attempt to try to DM and learn a lot of different things about DMing along the way. And I right now would class myself as like an amateur artist and amateur cosplayer, and I have a bunch of like other nerdy hobbies tagged along with me. So
Yeah, man. We could put a plug to your stuff if you want. I've never had a guest before. So
Oh yeah, for sure.
Sorry.
We can definitely plug your socials. We can drop a link in the video description.
Yeah, but Steven's stuff is pretty cool. I mean, I've never actually met somebody. Steven's my first DM and my first cosplay friend. So I live vicariously through Steven and his Instagram. Yeah, I mean, I think it's really cool, man.
thanks.
Yeah. So like Steven said, Steven was my real first DM actually. So tons of fun campaigns. Steven again is probably Steven has actually closed out a couple campaigns. We were actually just talking about that a couple weeks ago, or maybe last week.
Yeah.
It's hard to remember in
Actually,
COVID
episodes
times.
ago.
Yeah.
I haven't DM'd in a bit because I burnt myself out on DMing because I've been doing it for how long? Since we were like late high school. We were still in like, I think like, grade 11, like senior years of high school. I was DMing all the way till now, which has been
10 years.
Like a decade.
Something.
well,
Yeah.
It's been a long time, man. It's like 10 years now, almost, I think. 10 to 12 years. So I kind of burnt myself out on DMing quite a bit because I've always defaulted to DMing. Because you always run into this problem where a lot of people want to play, but not a whole lot of people want to attempt to DM their own game. So I always ends up, once you gain enough experience, it kind of automatically falls onto you suddenly when you have a bunch of people are like, oh, we're down to play a game. No one wants to DM.
Yeah.
Yeah, man. Yeah, I think it's like, I think I took over your DM chair when we like went off to universities. You started living out in Guelph, right?
Yep.
So when I moved back, I think I took up that mantle of DMing for our friend group, and then then Calvin joined our friend group and was like, hey man, I want to go DM stuff, and then he did it, and then now our DM group is all of a sudden exploding with DMs. Actually, like our friend Rebecca ran a game for us last week, and she's super new. She's never played. She started playing like tabletop games like in 2019. She's like, yeah, I want to DM. It sounds pretty fun, and it was like a blast, man. It's crazy good.
Yeah,
I'm very happy.
We definitely should talk about that. I don't know if we'll get to it this episode, but I do want to like recap that game because it was like really well done.
Yeah, it's crazy. She did like a instead of it being like fantasy adventure, it was like fantasy high school adventure, where it was we were like teenagers at a high school, and I had like the best time actually. So we'll touch back on that eventually. But yeah, Steven, man, like I gotta say, like I've had some of our best times in your worlds, man. It was good.
It's just a lot of trial and error after, like, because I remember the first couple games I ran, and oof, do I remember some of like the ones that didn't work out, or like the ones that I didn't find like it does not hold to the standard I hold to now.
Yeah.
Just thinking back on the first original ones, because I don't know if everyone remembers, like we all started DMing because we saw a YouTube video, or playing D&D and Pathfinder and all this like tabletop RPG back all the way in high school, when we found a YouTube video where I don't remember what exactly was called.
Oh, I think it was like, Rooster Chick. Was it Rooster Chicken or something?
Rooster Teeth?
Not Rooster Teeth. It was Robot Chicken.
Oh, okay.
Robot Chicken, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it was the people from Robot Chicken playing D&D.
Okay, I never heard of that.
Because that was basically when, all the way back, it was the, I can't remember, but it was, way back when, and that YouTube video, we saw how much fun they were having, and we decided to try it out for our first time. And so, back then, one of our friends, Chris, had like a bunch of miniatures from his uncle.
Yeah. And
so he tried to run a game, but he ran into like the pitfalls I ran into on running games, which is essentially assuming your players will do this linear path that you have set out in your mind. And that's one of the things that you learn very quickly when you're DM'd, like pretty much once or twice. You realize the players will never follow this linear path you have in your mind. They will always diverge into some weird like things, and they will do stuff that you don't expect. And you have to be able to roll with that.
Yeah, man. Honestly, like it's a thing, man. No plan ever,
survives first contact with the players.
Yeah.
I think that's like one of the obviously, like one of the first things people running games will learn. Like, even if you do end up with a group that kind of like sticks very close to what you have planned out, because I have had some experiences with that, but still there's always these one or two moments where you have to like make up something real quickly on the fly, because you didn't come up with a name for a certain character or a certain place, or you didn't have an idea of what was going on in a certain location, but you just gotta like improv it right in the moment to keep the world feeling consistent.
And I think our story is kind of cool too, because it's like, like us just finding a random YouTube video. It wasn't even like Critical Role or any of these famous shit now. So it's like just us random ass YouTube video. We're like, let's do it.
Even around 2010? I don't think it was.
No, I don't. Yeah, it wasn't. This was like before 2010, because it was like 2009, right? And
for
like,
sure.
What was YouTube even back then? It was like nothing. So like. And like just so happened that Chris's uncle had a bunch of D&D crap lying around like in his basement or whatever, and we just got to use it for like a couple of years. Like that was like some like what's it called, Stranger Things shit, you know what I mean?
Yeah, it was a great jumping off point for all of us to be able to just start playing D&D. And it's, again, I've learned a bunch from, I went from using, modules I found online to creating my own modules in many different like role-playing and tabletop RPGs.
Yeah.
So like what? Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Oh, I was just saying, and you learn a lot of things with it, because like it's also like it's nice to run your own modules, but at the same time finding them like online or like pre-made ones, it takes a lot less work and a lot less stress, because that's the main reason I burnt out on DMing quite a bit, was because I kept making my own modules, creating my own worlds, which was fun, but the problem was the amount of work that you have to put in. Like, Calvin, you experienced that one game where you guys all seem to have a lot of fun, where I was given a blank character sheet.
Yeah, I did want to bring that one up, yeah.
Yeah, you discover things about your characters, like that your character has pure amnesia. you literally do not remember anything about yourself. And so your character sheet is entirely blank, but as you try things out, you start filling out the character sheet as your character, punches a tree and found that one of them broke your hand, the other just slammed the tree and snapped the tree in half with his punch. And you start filling things out as you realize different things about your character.
Yeah, like even our character race, we didn't know at the time.
Yeah, you didn't know what the race was, and you had to get other players looking at you and go like, oh, you have pointy ears, probably an elf.
Mm-hmm.
But a problem with that was, again, it burnt myself out because the pure amount of work I had to put into worlds, as well as each of the individual characters, was so much, it burnt me out in trying to complete it and make it, and I just experienced burnout because it became more of a chore to fill out all these information and then figure out how to translate what a character can do into what the player's actions are, because you can't predict what people are going to try. Or
and you have to try and give like hints and stuff like that, right? Like so it was
purely burning out, and sadly, like I enjoyed that idea. Like I wish I had the motivation to keep going with you guys on this game, but I had to stop because I just couldn't compel myself to keep completing this next part of the story. Like I have the story in my mind how I want to play out, but I have to keep filling out, okay, how am I going to hint? I don't want to hint too much because it's supposedly supposed to be around 4 to 5 different sessions, so I can't give you too much information in the first 2 because it ruins the mystery at that point.
Yeah.
So it's so much stuff. Like again, I would say like one of the main problem was that I gave myself too much work, and it was over ambitious for at the time.
Yeah, true. I mean, it just sounds like it requires like a lot of planning and kind of just sitting there being like filling out a bunch of options to be like, okay, if my players try this on this character, this will reveal X, Y, and Z, right?
Yeah.
And like even me thinking about it, it sounds exhausting to figure out all the time, especially because it's like 4 of us, right? If it was maybe like one character, like you're doing a solo session, yeah, man, that wouldn't be too hard. But having to be like aware way more than you're actually doing. 5 of us, even worse, right?
Yeah, because then you have to do like along with the DM work that you normally have to do, you also have to make 5 different player characters and their backstories.
Sounds. Yeah, man, that sounds kind of nuts.
But it is like it was like a very interesting idea. Like, I mean, at some point you would want to redo that or come back to it or anything like that. Like, I don't even know how you would make that process easier. In terms of prep.
Because the main problem was that it's all like the first session's easy because people are trying to find out race, stat, what kind of class they are. Those are easy enough to like hint at. But then once you found out your race, your stat, your general idea of what your stats are, and your class, then you have to find out the abilities that you have, which then becomes harder because, as everyone who's ever played Pathfinder and D&D knows, your abilities and feats in the game have a laundry list of different feats, different spells, different abilities, and to try to hint at each one, as also keeping... For me, as a DM, I have to keep in mind what each of you guys have. Because, it was over-ambitious because it was the fact that also all of you were level 20 characters. Which meant you all had maxed out different spells. So if you were, for example, a wizard of any sort, you would have, like, 9th level spell to 0 level spell, but you would have, like, 4 9th level spell, like, 8, I don't remember the exact breakdown, but... You essentially by the end of it had like 30 different spells.
Yeah. I mean that's nuts, man. I think maybe you could probably try and redo it. I think, but like instead of it being like where the level 20th version of the stuff, do something a little bit lower, and then just literally just give us the monster stat block instead of like giving us actual characters. Because I'm thinking of like like a pit fiend or something has spells and stuff like that, but they don't actually have that many abilities. So, I mean, if one of us was a pit fiend and we didn't know, right, then we could just get the pit fiend stat block. It's definitely way less abilities than a character sheet, but still way awesome because I get to be a pit fiend. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, it's something unique. I've developed into like wanting to do more unique things because, again, as I guess I'll explain my evolution as a DM goes. So, very first couple games I played was, again, as I said, I pulled off modules off the internet. I just kept on trying to rework, bits of it to have this through line story involving like paladins, and it was a very simple good versus evil story, but it was good enough that I was able to again take these modules I found online and just have essentially added NPCs that were paladins. That again, a very simple good versus evil story, nothing too crazy about it. And that's how I ended the module, or ended that entire gaming session. Was that I believe we played up till, God no, this was a long time ago, but I believe we were like level 16 or something in 3.5.
Yeah. Yeah, it was pretty high. It was up there for sure.
And I used pretty much entirely all modules for those runs. I've never attempted to make my own for that because again, it was very much me learning to DM. Yeah. And over the years, I started then creating my own world for the next session. I've created next gaming session.
Just really cool. It was I remember you basically grabbed like, went to the dollar store or whatever, grabbed like one of those big sheets of like, presenting paper or whatever.
It's a giant chart paper essentially.
Chart paper,
like,
right?
Back then. Yeah. I don't even know if people even remember this or know about it now because I'm pretty sure they removed it from classrooms now, but it used to be one of those like giant chart papers they would hang up for teachers to like write on and stuff like that.
Wow,
yeah, and you literally like, you just sat in front of us, you put some stuff on the map, and then you're like, all right, guys, pick a place and tell me what's there or whatever. You said put some crap there.
Basically, I had a general rule of like, okay, this is a town that's like the northern town where all the outcasts kind of is a hideaway because it's surrounded by mountains. It's essentially like frozen Russia. Actually, no, not Russia. If it's Australia was frozen.
If Australia was frozen, yeah.
Yeah, okay. It was essentially, there was a harsh environment, and this is where all the unsavory people and outcasts kind of ran to be. And there was a mining town. I don't remember the exact name, but essentially, I created this entire world, told everyone, pick where your character should originate, or let me know about what your character background is, and I will help you place them somewhere in this world to make them feel more organic, that your character has history here.
Oh yeah. I did that for my, I guess, homebrew campaign that I'm running right now. Like, I mean, so the idea of it is like they're trying to resettle this new land, their newly discovered land, right? But they're all coming from somewhere. So I was like, this is kind of like, I didn't actually tell them all the places they could possibly come from. I was like, this is a fantasy world, there's fantasy things in it. Just tell me what it's like, where you're from. And then they told me a little bit about their characters, and then I just put them into I just put them on the map. And sometimes I had to create whole places for them, like I took that from that campaign actually. Yeah. And it's pretty good because it worked out for me, because I don't know, like, you're right, filling up an entire world full of crap is hard.
Yep.
Yeah, I remember like it became more of a, I'm trying to remember like the exact thing that happened, because there was one campaign I remember running for that world that I was incredibly proud of, and it was the horror campaign. I don't know if not campaign, but the horror game or horror session.
Oh, okay.
I don't know if you remember it, Ramon, but it was essentially the house in the woods style of game.
I don't remember.
The living dolls inside the house.
Oh, kind of remember that.
Yeah, that was one I was actually proud of, because I was able to get a really good like horror atmosphere going with that quest, essentially. That one session.
Oh yeah,
where it's like,
because we retconned that, because we're experimenting with the rules. I remember this now because my character blew up the hut because we were like messing around with homebrew rules, and then we were like, no, that was dumb, let's retry that.
Yeah, by the end of it, you did burn down the house.
Yeah, it was like the simplest solution. I don't know why more horror protagonists don't try that.
Burn down the house.
Burn down the house. Houses are super flammable. That's why we try really hard not to burn them down now.
Yeah, that's a good thing.
Yeah, just make that your first step.
Haunted, just burn down the house.
Yeah, you see a creepy house? Don't go inside. Get the gasoline. light it on fire.
There's a lot of wood there. Just, light a candle, put it on the curtain, and let it go.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, just like leave right at that moment.
Yeah, right. And just get out of the house. Like, forget it. It's not worth it, man. I don't care how much you like your friends. No way.
Peter after that.
They're probably got dead. The ghost got them. Just burn it down.
But Steven, I wanted to ask because you were talking about like starting off doing modules and then going into making your own world. I was kind of wondering like what the motivation was for that. Like, did you just want to like start exploring your own thing or start doing something more unique?
Yeah, pretty much. Like, thinking back on it, the thing that made me want to create my own world was that after the first game, it basically, as I was including modules from other, third parties on the internet, I was realizing that it was slowly assembling this kind of world.
Mm-hmm.
That in my first set gaming, I'm using like mixed terminologies because I don't know what to call it. But
that's
first,
I don't think there's standardized words for this stuff, man.
First, whatever like bunch of sessions of games are called. But essentially, once I finished that, campaign. That's the word I was looking for. After finishing the first campaign with everyone, I realized that this entire expansive world was created with, like, as I said, people ran from level 1 to 16, and each time we finished a module, they leveled up. So there was essentially 16 different modules, and placing these 16 different modules in this world suddenly created an entire world that I never thought of. And by the end of it, I looked back on it, I was like, man, this is an entire world now that was created from just fighting kobolds in a dungeon or something. It was just something simple like that, because it was my first session I ever ran. So we were like, level 0, you fight kobolds in a dungeon.
Yeah.
And it was a very simple thing, and it ramped up to, having modules that involved small towns, which is one of the failings one of the early failings I've learned was, again, I don't know how much you remember of this, Ramon, but I remember it being the second session and was the biggest learning experience. Because in the second session, there was supposed to be a mystery about about like mysterious murders across the town, as well as odd things happening. And so you eventually find out it was a two-headed ogre, but one of the heads was actually a priest that got turned into a two-headed ogre. And so the thing that I wanted everyone to do, because it was supposed to lead into the good versus evil, paladin order, that you were supposed to save the priest. But the problem was doing non-combat damage is really annoying in D&D. Right. Because you take a -4 to hit, I believe, back in D&D, which makes it really annoying to try to... And everyone got frustrated. I remember everyone getting frustrated. They're like, can we just kill him? People were just like, can we just murder this guy? Fuck this. It's really annoying to do. And I realized that's the first failing, was that I was forcing people to do something unfun and they didn't want to do. And it was not... They had no, allegiance to this new priest character. It was just something that I was forcing people to do. And I was like, oh, this is a major failing in this, like, way I've made this part. Or, like, I borrowed this module. Because there should be an option for you to kill him and have, like, some kind of other consequences or benefit for doing it. Right, but I never laid out any of that. Again, it's just all this, you learn stuff as you go along. I learned a lot from that. I remember very vividly because of that. Because I remember the frustration I had, the frustration everyone else had playing the game, because I was frustrated that people didn't want to just save this person they have no reason to save this person. He's really annoying to try to save. Why would you ever want to save him? And everyone's frustrated because, again, it's annoying to save this person. So I learned a lot from that and realized you can't force your players to do if they want to, like, murder someone, you have to be ready for that. And you have to be able to roll with stuff like that, and don't have a predicted outcome that's so specific.
Totally. I mean, I think it's especially if we're trying to save someone that we don't care about,
Yeah,
right?
you've never met him. You have no allegiance to this person. It's the second second or third game of the campaign. Why would you even care about this person? But the problem was that was supposed to lead into the whole story arc because, and again, it was a terrible lead in, and luckily everyone was stuck with me past that third session, because the third session is when we finally finalized that. Yes, we will keep playing using this world and using these characters. Because the first two were like, all right, we'll try a D&D, see if we stick with this game or not, see if we, have interest by the end of these first two sessions. After this first two sessions, we're like, all right, we're down. We want to keep playing. We're interested. And so that's when I tried to make an overarching story. And again, I made a very bad starting because I needed some way to introduce your whole party to being part of this paladin order.
Yeah. Well, you know what? Honestly, I don't think I really know anybody who has had like a spectacular first time doing anything, without support from like people who already played the game, right? Like honestly, Steven, like you came in out of like nowhere and was like, I'm gonna DM, and then you did it, and it was kind of amazing because legitimately, like, at that time, I had no clue how you could do it. Like, honestly, I was like, this is impossible. How does someone just pick up a game and be like, yep, I can do a million rules and remember all these things and roll all these dice and make all these funny voices and characters and crap happen, like...
It helps me having no shame.
Yeah.
When I'm like, all right, I'm gonna just make the weirdest accents and voices, and we'll just roll with it. We'll just keep going with it. I don't care.
Shit's so funny.
You also, again, you learn a lot of things, like realizing, like a lot of the newer games, like five. I believe D&D is now on 5.0.
Yep. Still is.
Yeah, it's on 5. It has like streamlined a lot of things for DM, because back then we were running on 3.5 to Pathfinder.
Yeah.
And I remember the very first gaming session also, I over-equipped you guys like crazy. Like, I made items too cheap and too prevalent. So you guys were like decked out to the nines by the time you were like level 10. You already had like +3 with 5 modifiers on your weapon or some shit.
Yeah, well, like, honestly, I think I took that experience of you decking us out so much all the time. Like, honestly, it was, even in your later games, I felt like we had the coolest shit, like, all the time. Like, I do that now in my own games. Like, I can't go a game without giving somebody some new cool personal item for them, or making sure that they have whatever items they want, because, I find that, like, a good part of that. Like, that's, like, my jam about the game. It's, like, having your dude who's really good with swords get their cool, awesome sword that he wants. That's just like what I want to do all the time. And I think it's because you did that for us. I mean, inadvertently, by accident, you're like, I think I overcooked it them. But it made the way that like I like to play the game, or I like to run the sessions, being like, yeah, man, cool magic items. It's like cool magic items, a big cast of NPCs, and then card combats, and that's like basically my games. Like,
yeah. See, the thing I've learned from that, though, is that you don't need to give people very powerful weapons. You just have to give them interesting weapons.
Exactly.
There's a difference between those two. Because there's a difference between giving a person the +5 sword of, like, Valor, Flaming, fucking 6 other modifiers on it.
Yeah.
And giving them, the Knucklebone of Fickle Fortune.
Oh, yeah.
Where you roll a dice, D20, and you see what happens.
Oh, I lost characters to that thing.
Also, the card deck of many things or something like that. I just remember you start giving just interesting items, and if people have a specific goal for an item and is known, then you can try to weave them in, but you don't need to say, all right, the shop has like 6 +3 items with different modifiers. There's a bunch of armors with plus modifiers. Pick and choose what you want. Deck yourself. You don't need to do that. You can just say, all right, this little intriguing item is here, and you can make more interesting weapons. You don't need to make them powerful. Just interesting.
I mean, just give them like an ability that class normally can't really do, or I don't know, just be like, okay, here's this is the stick of fire. Cast a fire spell, they'll light something on fire. It's just like, oh, that's really awesome. And I think like fun crap like that should just be more throughout the game. But yeah, that's just you can see how that I got that from you.
I learned it from you. So like, how does I guess this might apply to both of you, but like, how would you develop your game if you feel like you've put the players in a position where they're especially powerful, but they do have unique items? Like, do you feel the need to rebalance your game as far as combat goes as you go on, or?
One of the things I did was you make them scared for dear life that they're gonna lose that powerful item.
I have heard that. That is one of the things I have heard about your campaign, Steven, is that they are particularly difficult in combat.
Yeah, there was one of the times I remember that I've purposely put like, oh, there's this door barred up by wooden like boards. The door's made of wood. The lock and key seems to have like rusted apart. And you're like, oh, that's strange. Everyone's like, there must be great treasure behind it. And rip open the wood to go into the room. And inside was essentially, I don't remember what it was called, but essentially it was a creature that caused anything.
I think it's just called a rust monster.
Yeah,
it was literally just like a room full of rust monsters.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah, and so essentially the warrior looked at all his shiny stuff and started running because he's like, oh crap, I'm gonna lose everything.
Yeah, man, it was nuts. I thought that was hilarious because I got my druid some time to shine because druids in 3.5. I actually don't know if it's 100% the same thing in Pathfinder or 5e or whatever, but we can't use metal items, right, or wear metal armor. So I was like, oh, cool, I don't have nothing to worry about. Slap the crap out of some bugs. Yeah. So
all the martial characters essentially picked up all their nice shiny metal stuff and ran away.
It's so funny.
They didn't want to fight it, but yeah, it was supposed to be like a rust insect or something, like a large insectoids that, again, eat metal and rust things, so...
Yeah, I love rust monsters. They're pretty cool. Man, just cool things like that. Also makes me remember about rust monsters, too. Like, I'm just like, I haven't deployed any of that yet, but it's there.
I mean, I'm glad.
You make them fear that they're gonna lose it is a good way to help balance it out in some ways. Like, don't make something specifically targeted at a person, because rust monsters, like any metal, they'll rust. So they're not specifically targeting a player. It's just like, if you have metal, you're probably afraid of losing it.
Yeah.
To that thing. But yeah, you essentially make it a way so that their item, like, they kind of fear losing it. It helps balance it a bit. Because you don't want to forcefully make them lose it. Because that becomes unfun. Yeah. It kind of feels targeted. It's unfun. Because for me, the most important thing is that the players are having fun. It's doesn't matter, how powerful they are. As soon as I start detecting my players aren't having fun, in my head, I'm noting to myself I'm failing as a DM if they're not having fun. Because that's the main thing, is that I want my players to have fun, but without, making it unfun for every other player. Because there have been encounters where some people really want something incredibly overpowered, but I know for a fact will make it unfun for everyone else because they will steamroll through things, while all the other players will just kind of throw up their hands and go, well, I guess
you're the main character now.
Yeah, I guess we'll just go home.
Yeah. So, the way I DM, everyone has their own style. My way of DMing is that it's very utilitarian. I try to make it the most fun for the most amount of people.
Yeah. I think that might kind of apply, like, really to, most DMs, because it does contribute to sort of that feedback loop. Like, if your players are having fun, then you'll start to have fun, and if you're having more fun with the game, then your players are going to pick up on that, and they're going to have more fun, like, playing in it and being in this world that you're, like, creating with them, and this narrative that you're writing with them.
Yeah. It's also, it's a bit of a balancing act. Once you get used to DMing, you start realizing there's a balancing act with making things difficult, but not too difficult, because you want it difficult enough that they feel a sense of pride and a sense of progression when they defeat a combat or get through a challenging scenario. You want them to feel like they accomplished something. But you don't want to make it too difficult where they're like, all right, we're frustrated and slogging through this thing. Like, you want to be just, difficult enough that they kind of fear that they're gonna lose something important, but not so difficult that they want to just give up on this fight and just like do something else or hightail it out there.
Well, that's what I like to think of it being like it's like the action scene, right? You need the action scene to be like the main characters in the story of like a movie or whatever is like in trouble and they could get hurt or whatever, right? But it's never something that it's impossible for them to figure out. It's just gonna be like kind of difficult, and they have to like sometimes it's like the big fight and they have to dig deep and pull out something new or something they never thought about before. But that's what I want. I always try and strive for like that key. I like to think of it as like John McClane. Like everybody's always John McClane in the movie, and it's like you're always in Die Hard, in Die Hard, and you're always like you're in a bad situation, but you're still smart and resourceful enough to kind of keep one step ahead from the bad guys, right? Yeah. So I love that.
It's also 100% you have to get a sense of what your play group styles are too, because I've had multiple different play groups where you guys are much more when I was playing Ramon and everyone, we had a bit like in the middle. I would say we have a good amount of role playing, but we also had like fun silly moments that's like not like pure role play prospect where we're just having like fun with stuff and it breaks slight immersion, but people are having fun joking around. And I had like games that are just pure fun, like it's just jokes. Most part there's an overarching story, but everyone treats like everything as like a fun jokey hangout manner. So you also have to get a feel for what your playgroup wants to do. Where that jokey hangout manner, there wasn't as much role playing to it. It's just a lot of people off the cuff trying to do stuff. And then we have like, again, everyone has their own different styles of wanting to play, and I feel like it's before you start a game you should let your playgroup know what, or ask your playgroup if they want to do one more RPG role-playing aspect, because I've also had friends play super heavy role-play games where it's just role-playing all the time. And it's like you stay in character when your character talks all the time. You essentially just pure role-play, and again, everyone likes it different ways too, as well.
I mean, that sounds exhausting to me, and I don't think I would ever enjoy being in that game or running that game.
I mean, to me that sounds awesome. So
everyone, to each their own, and you gotta get a feel for people at some point. That's again, this is all stuff I've learned through years of DMing, where I've doing with Ramon and that whole Brampton crew. We played a mixed bag of like, well, we're gonna role play at some points, and then joke around and like have fun with it at different points, and was a good balance I found. And then other groups I had where I was DMing for my friends in Guelph, I found that we like to joke around a lot of the time. Like even with character names we were joking with, because there was a friend who I don't remember his first character name because it was really dumb, but the second character's name, once it died, he was like, I made a new character. It's He-Man.
Okay.
And so he ran around as He-Man or the man, depending on however you want to pronounce it, because he's like, yes, it's one word, but it can be pronounced multiple ways.
Like the letter T.
Yeah,
He-Man.
letter T,
okay.
He-Man, or the man, your choice.
That's so funny.
Yeah, that entire campaign was jokes on jokes. It was people, like, there was an overarching story that people, were completing, but we weren't exactly being like super serious RPG role playing all the time.
It's like the stakes. I mean, the stakes are high, but the people who are doing the campaign or whatever, they're like, I'm Jokes McGee or whatever, right? Like I got 5 hats on or something. Like
it was like, I'm trying to remember, his first character's name was like something McGillicuddy.
McGillicuddy.
It was something weird. We were like, oh yeah, now I remember, Frozo McGillicuddy.
Frozo McGillicuddy.
Sounds real cool.
Yeah, it's so dumb. We just had like the dumbest character's name, and we just goofed around. Like again, we took threats seriously, but we just like goofed around with a lot of different things. And the DM adapted to that. They had a lot of like things that we done that were like, okay, cool. well, like we found a trebuchet, and we're like, all right, well, we're inside this castle. We found a trebuchet on the top thing. Let's just fire it in a random direction. Like we were just like, fuck it, let's just fire in a random direction. Like I was like, all right, I'm gonna aim it. He-Man loaded the boulder, and I rolled to fire it, and apparently I fired it into town.
Oh shit!
And I was like, well, as long as we all stay quiet about who fired it, we could say that we dealt with the menace that attacked their town.
Yeah, that's too funny.
Yeah, again, it was just like jokes all the time. And again, the DM rolled with it because he's like, all right, roll. And I've rolled like a nat 20. And the guy's like, you precisely struck the town that was all the way over there with your amazing roll.
Nice. I mean, yeah, that kind of shenanigans and stuff. I always think that there's definitely a place in like there should, well, okay, everyone's table is their own table, yeah. And you know their group's their own group. But like I love it when you kind of go back between like things are kind of serious to things are kind of silly. You know what I mean? Things are kind of dire. We're all gonna die to be like, you know, you guys are a bunch of goofballs, right? It's like a Saturday morning cartoon vibe.
Yeah,
like, you know, I love
pretty much what it felt like when I was playing the D&D. Was a Saturday morning cartoon. Like again, there was an overarching story and we were trying to accomplish something, but we were accomplishing in our own like goofy character ways.
Yeah, right. And like so now are you playing in a lot of games now instead of running them?
I've been
just taking a break in general.
Yeah, I'm just taking a break in general. Again, I think I burnt out myself on because again, I've been playing D&D, running DMs and playing it for all these years that I think I just burnt out in general. Just from like not even just D&D, I also played Lancer when you brought it up, Ramon. I've been DMing a couple of those games. I think I've completely burned myself out because Lancer renewed my interest in DMing for a bit, but then I started burning myself out on Lancer as well because I was creating. As Lancer is a very new game, so there's no real module to base it off of.
Right.
So I based off a lot of my Lancer game off science fiction video games and science fiction like media, and. As far as it seems like a lot of people seem to enjoy it, but again, I've then burnt myself out on it after like running 4 different sessions or creating 4 new sessions.
Out of nothing, right?
Those 4, I just was like, all right, I have like, I don't know how to make this more interesting anymore. I'm just like, because each time again, this is a fault of my own, is that each time I ran Lancer, I don't know how much you guys talked about Lancer in the past, but
a bit, yeah.
A bit? Okay, good. So that every time I ran Lancer, each time I ran it, each session was unique to that session. So, for example, the first session I ran with my Guelph friends, I ran it in the similar vein to the way Ramon actually ran the first session for me. And it was essentially, they hijacked the ship, or terrorists have hijacked the ship. You know, you have to somehow get into the ship and either get it back and defeat all the terrorists. Yeah. And so with that, like we try to, in Ramon's campaign, we try to like trick them into being a stranded ship that needed help, and we're trying to go like, we have, you know, valuables, come and help us. And try to like, you know, take over. Of course, that failed hard because people could not make rolls at all.
People couldn't lie hard enough and be convincing enough or hide well enough. Because I remember you guys also like brought like a rock out of nowhere. So it's like your ship is like floating in the middle of space, and then you brought a random rock that's also floating close by, and you're like, half of us are gonna hide on the ship, the other half are gonna hide behind the rock.
Yeah, no, that was for my Guelph friends. They did that. They're like, all right, 2 of us gonna be behind this giant this asteroid. 2 of us gonna be in the ship. We're gonna feign, or not even feign. They were like, we're gonna fly beside the ship, and we're gonna distract them with our ship. And then the people in the rock will push the rock closer to them. But the problem is the ship's like, well, for a rock to be big enough to hide your mechs behind, it's big enough to threaten the ship a bit. So they're gonna try to shoot down the rock, and they're like, oh no. Because you're hiding not just one mech, you're hiding 2 mechs behind this rock, so it has to be large enough so that they can't see you, and big enough that it overshadows your mechs. They're like, it's a relatively large asteroid heading towards your ship. They start trying to shoot at it, and all hell broke loose. But yeah, and the thing I again copied off your campaign, Ramon, was the time counter where they said, oh, it's T minus 60 seconds till light speed warp.
Yeah.
And so they have to figure out, like, when I played in your campaign, Ramon, like, our friend Joel decided the solution was to hack the ship to stop the light speed warp.
Yeah, I remember that. And then he got out of his mech.
He got out of his mech and got wrecked because he's a squishy boy out of his mech.
Well, I think he ended up. I mean, I thought it was a good idea. I wasn't gonna pull any punches. If the big robot found him, he was gonna slice him in half, right? Which he ended up doing. But I think he delayed the countdown by. So it was worth it. And then eventually, you guys took care of the two mechs that were on board and subdued the crew. But Joel just had to die. That was his choice.
Yeah,
and funny enough, he still is the only person to jump out of their mechs to go do a thing. All of them. He always wants to jump out of his mech.
I don't understand that one. I just never understood why he did. I'm like, mechs are cool. Why do you want to be a squishy human?
A Titanfall life, right? Like,
that mech life. What are you doing? The mech life. It's great. If I'm mech all the time, no one can hurt me. He's just always so surprised when I start shooting at him, or when at one point I jumped into his mech after he left it open. Right? He left it like there. I'm like, yeah, you just got out of your mech. Just shoot the people inside.
Yeah, right. It's so I think it's a cool risk play, but he also has to understand that like sometimes you just. I'm like they're not stupid. The bad guys want to win.
Yeah, actually, funny enough, one of my friends in Guelph, when I was running that campaign with that session with them, built a character designed to get out of his mech, but he built it well because it was essentially a mech that's really good at grappling. And so the whole basis is that he grabs the boss, starts winning the fight really well, and says, "Get out of your mech and fight me 1v1 IRL."
Fight me IRL.
Fight me IRL. 1v1. No mechs. And of course, like, again, it was done well because once the enemy was like, well, I can't get out of the grapple, and he's going to kill me if we stay in the grapple. So my best shot is to get out of the mech and fight him IRL in a duel. Of course, he has yet to win a duel because all the other players look over and go, oh, the enemy got off his mech. Shoot him. And so he has yet to have a real duel because every time the enemy gets out of the mech to duel him, the enemy just gets shot immediately by the sniper.
It's hilarious, man.
All right, I have a railgun. I'm just gonna shoot the enemy.
I'm just gonna blow that guy to smithereens real quick.
He got out of his mech. So he has yet to finish 1v1ing anyone, but
his heart is in it. The spirit is there.
Oh man, yeah. I love players who think off the cuff and like think about other cool stuff like that. But like, I don't appreciate players who don't think of it all the way through. That's kind of like I want you to be as cool as you want to be, but I want it to be like I'm still not gonna pull any punches. Like you have to.
It fits within the rules of the world. If a sensible person is going to shoot you when you're out of your mech, expect that. Don't act surprised when you suddenly get shot when you leave your mech. You're like, oh yeah, that's the way I usually DM is that it's like, as long as you make sensible decisions and it makes sense, I'm willing to roll with you. Like once you stop making sensible decisions and like just expect me to fudge things or like just expect me to accommodate your many requests, that's when I get annoyed. Where I'm like, no, you have to figure this out yourself. I'm not gonna just wave my hand and say it works.
Yeah. Well, that's true. I mean, I think for me, I like to, if it's a good idea, I want to try and figure it out together. But if it's just like game breaking or kind of like to the point where it's definitely not going to be fun for everyone, or you're just trying to game the system by like going like trying to break something, then I'm not about it, right?
Yeah,
especially because I'm so lenient. I'm so lenient these days with rules and gear and like magic items and crap. I give players like so much, like like liberalism, not liberalism, like liberty to do whatever they want. If they tell me they want something, like we'll make it happen usually. So if someone's trying to like then get like a one up on that, I'm like, nah, draw the line.
Because we did talk about the rule of cool a few episodes ago. But as like even in that discussion, we were saying that there has to be some sort of like if you're doing something risky, there has to be like a chance of failure to it. Like you got to, even if you want to do your crazy plan, you should at least have to make some sort of check or something, or you put yourself in a position of higher danger than the rest of your companions because you're doing this risky thing. So like for me, like I lean more towards allowing things, but the crazier the plan gets, the more I'm like, okay, this is going to be more and more difficult or require more and more checks.
I'm also willing to assist players in if it's a cool idea that I'm like, oh yeah, this is cool and viable in this world. I'm willing to even be like, okay, this is how you would do it. This is another way you could do it, depending on which way, like which kind of skills and or checks you want to go for.
Yeah.
And you're like, I'm willing to assist players with it too, because it's a fun, as long as the players have fun and it doesn't break the rules or break the world, it's all good to me. I'm like, yeah, as long as you guys are having fun is the important thing.
Oh man, it's crazy, man. Like, okay, so I wanted to bring up one of my favorite campaigns that you've run, and that was probably, I don't know if you had a name for it, but it was like the Kingdom one with the contract demon.
Yeah, that was actually like, I can actually run through with you of like how I came up with it / how certain things came to be as the game progressed. So at the very first, like it was, I believe this was the last like full campaign I ran with you guys, and this, I believe it happened right around in our like last year of university / as we graduated. As it finished. And essentially the campaign started off with a very simple, it was a new coronation of a king. So I had like a story already planned out, but it was a vague idea of a story. Essentially the vague idea is that king is now dead. There's two brothers. The older one, which would make more sense to inherit the throne, is being passed up on the in the king's will, and it's given to his son, who's a bastard. And so the younger son is reluctant to take it, but the older brother is also very unhealthy and seems to be, suffering from illness. And so the very first part, I'm like, all right, I know where the twists and turns I want to do. I know like the hidden origins of the younger son's birthright, who his mom was, but it's all, and what's the secret illness plaguing the older son, and then try to implement it in you guys into the world. So it just started off as an assassination attempt as the coronation was happening, and you guys were, happened to be there and defended against the assassination attempt. And once we do that, we'll do like a little find out who the assassin was, and then this is after many years of DMing. I believe this is the 4th campaign I was running for you guys. So I've pretty much gotten a good idea of how to expand the world for you guys. So once you guys solved that problem, I knew I want to expand into the ice world. And I remember this very specifically was that you found out who the murderer was, and you killed him way too fast.
Oh boy.
Because you're like, we found the murderer. I rolled a crit. I rolled max damage on my crit. He is dead. And I'm like, okay. In this universe, you solved the problem and killed him. In another universe, because I need him to expand the story, you didn't kill him. Because I need you to chase him, and I wasn't expecting you to be able to one-shot him, like with just pure luck of rolling the dice. But I'm gonna give you kudos for that. But like story-wise, because he's not supposed to be an powerful like fighter. He was a merchant that used a lot of like constructs and a lot of stuff he imported to fight you guys. He found like, you know, magical bags that held monsters in them, and he was using them essentially like Pokemon.
Actually, I have to stop you right there. I had to put a point in that. I played a game with Calvin where I used like a shrunken petrified Hydra, which I stole from you.
Oh yeah, that.
Oh, that's what that was from.
Yeah, and I hit it underneath the table, like the same thing. Like it was like.
And so the idea was that the Hydra burst out. You guys were supposed to be all the knights were distracted, so that's how it like. Also, again, talking about trying to make the world make sense. Of course, there was when you found the guy. There was knights in this world that defends the castle, but now they're busy fighting a Hydra, and you had the opportunity to turn on him. And the idea was that he was simply going to use a darkness spell and have a golem construct, you know, defend him and as he escaped. Problem was, he unleashed the Hydra, about to cast the darkness spell, but then gets one-shotted immediately.
Yeah, that's so funny.
Yeah, it really sucks.
The golem that was defending him, and you just one-shotted him right there, and then I went, good job. I'll give you extra, you know, stuff for beating him when he leaves. But like, let's roll it back, and he actually escapes. Because that was not I believe like what happened was he did cast darkness, and then the next turn he was supposed to leave. But the problem was the warrior was already beside him, and so as he leaves, the warrior's like, "Well, get my attack of opportunity to go off." And I'm like, "Yeah," but you have a 50% chance of missing him because you know you can't really see him at all. And it was like good enough for me. Rolls a crit, rolls the hit on the 50%, max damage, he's dead.
Yeah, I had that exact same problem a couple sessions ago.
And I went, all right, give it.
Yeah, totally. Was that with Bruce, right?
Yeah. I also had a character who was just like a bandit ambush, and I had a character who was like the leader of these bandits. And when the fight started not going her way, my plan was for her to cast a darkness spell.
Yep.
And then use that to stealth away back into the forest. But unfortunately, even with that 50% chance to hit, Ramon's character, who's playing a half-orc monk, still managed to grab her, and like she just could not get out. So
once you grab, you're like, well, the monk has you.
I proceed to put you in chokehold till the end of the fight. Which is a cool way to. I don't know. I think it's hilarious. Yeah, no, it was just like. And then we had to chase that guy down
into the icy lands.
And then we were in jail for a while. We're in ice prison jail. Yeah.
New Kingdom. And you found him in jail, and you had to essentially do a jailbreak scheme.
Yeah.
You get out. You then discover there's like these weird lizard people that really want him dead.
Yeah.
And green lighted one of the lizards as you escaped. As we called it, which was essentially you just pulled like a lightning bolt scroll out, shot one of the lizards, and started running towards the boats to escape.
Yeah, that was one of our more goofier moments where we're all trying to jump up and try to figure out which we all landed into.
You all started running in different directions, and no one was really made a coordinated plan on which 3 boats you were going to get on.
Yeah.
So you ended up on like different boats.
Which I thought was super funny. And then after that, we went back home and was like, we did it. And then we just like got hired by the kingdom to just work there. And then we,
Yeah, like I even actually back when the first part of the campaign, I knew what the final boss was, or I had an idea of the final boss. The contract demon was actually an add-on to be instead. So the final boss, basically. I guess I'll do in chronological order so it makes sense for everyone listening. But so the next part of the story was supposed to be, investigate a bunch of these odd sightings. Or not odd sightings. The person that was killed that planned the assassination, he was a pretty wealthy individual who had a lot of trade routes and was essentially a wealthy merchant. So he had a bunch of estates and dark dealings that you had to investigate. So you investigate one of his estates, You found that in the estate, he had a contract demon living in luxury in the estate. Because he was just like, basically, he brought me some desperate people, and I lived it up here, and sounds like a good plan to me. And so, after, you ran around dealing with a bunch of, like, demons that were essentially people who signed contracts with the contract demon. Contract demon left because the spell that grounded him to this world was gone once the merchant was dead anyways. He only stuck around because it was a very nice house. He lived in a mansion for a while, so he's like, I just stuck around here for a bit. And so after that, you discovered that there was, essentially the main thing was that eventually you discovered that there was a curse on the kingdom, or not on the kingdom, on the lineage of the king, that essentially as each son will die younger and younger until the lineage ends. So that's why the king died in his like 40s. The oldest son was like in his late 20s, and he's starting to die. And so you discovered that each lineage is dying earlier and earlier. You found that it was a death curse placed on the lineage, which, because of the fact that like the contract demon was the one that essentially played a genie's palm with a dragon, because the dragon was sealed away by the very first like king. And essentially the contract demon was like, hey, I can just, you're sealed away here, how about I get revenge for you if you give me some of your powers? But as the genie's palm goes, they're like, well, I did end their lineage. It's just gonna take a couple hundred years, because they're gonna slowly die off.
Yeah.
And so it's one of those things, and you eventually like chase after. You go through many different like things you discover until you get to the end where you fight the contract demon.
Yeah, it was funny because I think like you also employed time skips, right? You also just kind of leveled us up. You're like, okay, you guys did the adventure, level yourselves up like 2 more levels or something like that, and we'll just start off a couple years later. And it was like we kept progressing, and I felt like our characters were really like, so I also took this part for my Inyan world where I wanted them to feel like they're investing in the actual place where they are. They aren't just like, a bunch of hobos running around the place, right? So, we all had jobs, we all had places to live, we all were hobos, and now we have, legitimate standing in the community, right? Yeah. And then I think you also did, so it's like all of the, as time progressed, all of our, I guess, leaders or whatever, that people we reported into, like they all retired, and then we got their jobs by the end of it. Like I was the kingdom's archmage by the end of it, right? Like I was.
Yeah, now you reminded me of that. Yeah, I totally forgot, because basically what happened was that as you guys were involved in this world, one thing I wanted always to do with this is time skip, because again, this is the 4th campaign, so we've played 3 other campaigns prior to this that you went from 1 to 2 to 3 to 4 to 5 to 6, and one level after the other.
Yeah.
But the problem with that is it gets stale after a while, because you looking at, again, we're doing 3 Pathfinder at this time. With Pathfinder, certain characters get interesting. Everyone gets something each level, but it's sometimes just not substantial. You might just gain like, oh, I gained a wizard, I gained additional spells amount at this level.
Yeah.
It feels good to gain it, but it's not substantially different enough. It doesn't feel like you're like really got a big jump. And we're all experienced players at this point, so you don't really need this slow easing into things.
Yeah.
So I decided, all right, every next session you level up somewhere between 2 to 4 levels, depending on like what my thoughts on the like next interesting thing should be. And usually it averaged around 3 levels.
Right.
And it worked out because every 3 levels you usually get a feat, you get something, as well as you get a handful of abilities. And so you get all those to add it to your character. It feels nicely refreshed, feels different. You get to have, more fun, because that's what also causes, combat to somewhat drag, is that you realize once you cast your one new spell or use your one new ability in a combat, the combat gets stale. But once you get like 3 or 4 new abilities and spells, then you can combine them, use them in different ways, or spread them out in different fights, and it keeps the fights interesting because that's a thing I always ran into, was that I realized, fighting gets stale after usually 2 to 3 combat. 3 max, but usually once you finish 2 combat, fighting slowly gets stale.
Yeah.
You don't feel invested, or it's not that interesting anymore because there's not much different from the previous session of fighting. So to keep it interesting, you just jump up 3 levels. Oh man, I have all these new toys to play with. I want to get into more fights. I want to try out these new toys that I've got. Okay. And that's how I found that was the best way to keep people interested in more than just 2 fights, as I again found through other campaigns where having more than 2 fights by the time you hit the 3rd or 4th fight, everyone's just sitting there well, I'm gonna do the same thing I did last fight.
Yeah, for sure.
I guess this is what we're gonna do now. I'm like, all right, and
well, the thing that I actually appreciated was, I guess every time we had a time skip, it was finding out what everybody else got up to in those years, because it was you would say it'd be 3 to 5 or 10 years or whatever, right? Yeah. So it's all of a sudden, our cleric that was in the party, he was praying to a kind of a crazy god.
God of insanity or something.
Insanity, but then somehow, because he had such good standing in the kingdom, he was granted a church, right? And it was just
it started off as he had a shack at the outskirts of town, and everyone just went, all right, it's the crazy homeless dude, whatever. It was just a little tiny shack that he had, and he recruited other crazy people.
Yeah.
Because he was a cleric, so he's well, I'm gonna recruit. Just convert people to my god. And so the only people that converted with this god was other crazy people. And so then slowly, as the years progressed, throughout the years, he got more and more people to join his church. Before it was just one other person and a dog. That was part of his quote-unquote church, which was again a shack at the outside of town.
But wasn't the dog actually a hound archon that just forgot that it was a hound archon eventually?
Yeah, it was some silly
silly thing like that. I don't know. I really enjoyed that part. I was just and
he eventually, as he recruited more people, the kingdom was well, he's kind of dealing with our homeless situation, as well as the kind of place for a lot of the crazy people to live, and he's housing a lot of people, so we'll just grant him more land, and it's kind of solving the homeless situation here. We don't really want to look at the direction of what he's doing, but he's doing enough good stuff that we're just grant him more land, I guess.
I don't know. Yeah, I thought it was so funny. And what was it? I think I told the story maybe last session, or not last session, last episode, where we fought a spellcaster in a dungeon, and then we decided not to fight each other because she was just getting paid to be here, right?
Yes. Yeah, because
right?
she surrendered once you got past the through her bodyguards, and she essentially said, "Did you kill the giant spider outside?" And everyone went, "What? The giant spider?" She said, "Oh, you haven't killed my familiar yet. Okay, how about we make a deal? You don't kill me, and you don't have to fight that giant spider familiar outside." And everyone was running low on spells and weapons at this point, and were exhausted, so they're like, "All right."
I think I ended up marrying that girl in game.
Yeah, you really marrying the girl, because she was like, "I'm only paid to be here. I will squeal on the person that if you give me amnesty and protection, I will squeal on the corruption in this town."
Yeah, I thought it was I don't know, man. I was that girl knows what's up. My character was yeah, I'm gonna make that girl my wife because she knows how to work this system.
Yeah.
Which is. It was so funny too because we had so much money and stuff, but my character just didn't need any of it. So then I was I guess I'll just give all my gold to my wife.
Yeah. She was like, yeah, I love the easy life. The only problem was that I don't know how to like write female characters like that in my D&D world. So I'm like, I don't know how does she act? I don't know what to do with her. It's like I don't want to botch it and make it sound like weirdly sexist. So I'm just like, I don't know, what does she do? Like, so I didn't really like give her much of a personality because I just never thought she would stick around in the story for that long.
That's the case, man.
Yep.
So I was like, I don't know what personality she has.
There's always one.
There's always one. There's always one NPC that just all of a sudden is like the focus of the, like, you know, just all of a sudden it's like at the end with the PCs, you're like, hey man, I thought you were a cook or something.
Oh, yeah, now I remember what your character did, Ramon. Your character was a wizard that agreed with the High Wizard of the Court, because the High Wizard of the Court was like, well, if we use demons have natural healing in D&D, like they just have automatic healing, so each turn they heal. And so the High Court Wizard's like, I'll just figure out how to use demon blood on people, because that way we can like heal people. Like,
I thought it was a great idea.
And everyone's like, oh, he's probably evil because the wizard's using blood, like demon blood magic. What is like dark sorcery is that? And you're like, no, that sounds like a reasonable thing to want to do, is to like heal people with this amazing, like, this demon blood that can, if he somehow makes it work, I don't know, I'm down to try that. Like,
yeah, I was like, it sounds like such like a good idea. I don't know why anybody would say no. Anyway, yeah,
so you then get adopted by him because you're like, oh, I never had a father.
Oh yeah, because you know the trope is that everyone's an orphan in D&D, right? Like no one has parents, right? Except this dude legitimately adopted me, like, you know.
Yeah, he eventually just like, I was like, I get here. So he was already like an old man. You had a whole whole funeral for him because he was dying as, like, you know, time grew old, moved on. I think it was like a second last session he died because of old age.
That was so funny. I was like, I finally have a dad.
Yeah.
I don't know, that made me so happy. It was like the funniest.
Like, you got appointed High Wizard after that, or a High Court Wizard. Yeah, again, there's stuff that, like, this was also like, it made it easier for me because everyone kind of dictated what their characters were doing and what their characters was interested in this world. So it made it easier for me to roll with things and like come up with something for your character. Because I always want my players to feel like they fit in this world. I don't want them to feel like they were just literally materialized into the world. Other than that one time I did that level 20 mystery campaign, you were legitimately materialized into that world.
Yeah.
But the other ones, I wanted people to feel like, yeah, you were part of this world somehow, and are able to have goals, have different thoughts about, like, opinions of how things are in the world, and just what they want to, you know, achieve.
Yeah.
The only one that I had trouble with is our friend Corey, who didn't have like a specific goal in mind for his character. He kind of just kept fighting things and getting stronger. So I kind of made him part of the knights of the kingdom. Yeah. And again, I just didn't have a proper direction for him until the very end. Because at the very end, he found like all these cute little vegetable people. And he was like, these people are adorable. These creatures are adorable. And they lost like their ruler or like the person protecting them because of the final fight.
Yeah.
And he's like, I'm gonna adopt them all. They're coming home with me.
They're all mine now.
They're all mine now. They're coming home with me. I will protect them. And so I'm like, all right. He eventually, like, I gave him like, well, eventually once you gained high standing, became one of the generals. When you retired, you're retired to literally a farm, where it turns out your farm is like the greatest agricultural center in the kingdom, because you have a bunch of vegetable people tilling the farm as well as keeping everything fertile and like
I think
fey vegetable creatures.
Yeah, you know what, man? I think you have a knack. I think the thing that scares me the most is actually kind of ending a campaign, and like you've done 4 successfully. I think anytime that you've finished a campaign that I was a part of, like, I always actually feel satisfied. It's so I'm so afraid of it. Like I'm so afraid of just not doing a good job. But like
I feel like the easiest way to end a campaign is have an idea of where, like, have a general idea but nothing nailed down of how you want to end it. So the first one, I actually had no idea how to end it. I just ended it because with a cool last big fight module that was a war between worm monsters and a kingdom. And wizards firing lasers into, like, it was just a cool, just general, like, final war, like, Lord of the Rings style, like, siege on a building. With people doing many different things. Having, like, one player being possessing a giant archon to fight the giant worm god.
Yeah, it was kind of cool. We all had like our own, like, our own little mini battles. Like I was, the one of our players was physically fighting the avatar of this giant worm monster. Yeah, I was fighting like the conjurer of the giant worm monster, flying through, having a really cool wizard fight with that person like in midair.
Yeah, right? The warrior was pushing back the waves of worm monsters on the ground.
Right. It felt like we were working like a team all this time, and then now we're like separated, fighting our own fight, one-on-one fights. We had like 3 one-on-one fights going on, and I thought it was pretty cool.
Yeah, that one was totally off the cuff. Not gonna lie, I was just like, all right, I know I want to end it with a giant war, but I don't know how this is gonna work out. And everyone kind of fell in. Like that's one thing is just let your players fall into certain things. Like let them fall into certain holes that they like to like fit into, because players will naturally, I've learned through DMing, players will naturally find their own fit in this world, in your world, as long as you make the world open and expansive in terms of what they could be or they could do. Of course, throw in suggestions what the world has, but don't be too hardline on whether something exists or not in this world, as long as it's not like, you know, guns, because I know guns are one of the hard things to properly DM into a medieval campaign, where you're just like, okay, this guy has a gun, like a machine gun for some reason, and everyone else has swords and shields.
Good luck, Last Samurai, Tom Cruise. Like,
yeah, well, weird. Like, I don't like as long as you don't hardline certain things. Even with guns, like you can be like soft on it, where you're like, I have a friend who played a D&D campaign. And he's like, all right, can I have a gun? But it's one of those like...
a musket gun, right?
Like a musket, yeah. It fires once, and it could be reloaded to fire again, but it's going to take like 5 turns. Because I have to like pour the Peter in, drop the bullet. All right, next time I gotta... Oh no, you have to clean it out first, and then drop the bullet in, put in the gunpowder in the next turn, shove it down in the next turn. You know, do all this work before you can fire again. It's like there's no feasible way you could ever reload that gun in a combat.
Yeah.
And there was another player who's like, "Oh, I want a gun too," and she's like, "All right, the guy that had the musket engineers you a gun. It's one of those crappy pea shooters that might not even kill someone. Not like the tiny, you know, like one bullet like hidden assassin guns that like may or may not pierce skin." Depending, if you're lucky, it pierces skin.
It's basically just handed him, here, take this BB gun. Yeah, hopefully it works.
It fires once and it doesn't do any much damage. He's like, oh, this sucks. It's like, yeah.
I know. Well, I feel like for guns, it would have to be like, you know, either everyone has it or no one has it.
Yeah, kind of deal. That's the thing. It's hard to deal with guns, but that's why
we're all cowboys, or like where no one's a cowboy, like.
Because it kind of makes bows and crossbows obsolete if people have guns running around.
I mean, they're faster to reload, obviously.
Yeah.
We are closing in on like an hour 20 though. So I did want to just like again touch a bit on like just have to put some final thoughts in on like ending campaigns.
Oh. Okay.
Because you were speaking about like, and I think we might want to do this sort of thing again. Like because I can tell you both have a lot of more stuff you want to say, but neither of you do the edits, so.
Fair enough.
But I did want to talk about like ending campaigns, because you were talking about like figuring out like what your players fall into, but also having an idea of where you would want to end. So, kind of what I was wondering is like, where do you form that idea of what the ending will be, and how much do you have to adapt that to where your players end up?
So, at the very beginning, I have an idea of what the ending fight generally should be. Again, that for that campaign where everyone had a very satisfying ending for where they ended up, I only had the idea of you will be fighting this dragon at the end. You actually never ended up fighting that dragon. Like you ended up fighting the contract demon instead. The contract demon wasn't even part of the story originally. It was developed because we needed a side quest to do with only you and one other player, Ramon. And that contract demon became to be because I just had to make a quick side quest that didn't affect the main story all that much. But I like the idea of the contract demon so much that I started trying to incorporate him more into the story. And I realized that, oh, he could be the final boss. Like, a contract demon, if you read the Pathfinder monster manual, is only CR 10. But if I decided, okay, change of plans, if I level him up to a CR 20 by saying, he drained the powers of the dragon through the contract, then I can make him CR 20. Because dragon fights are kind of been there, done that a lot of the times. Like, it's called D&D, for God's sake. Everyone's fought dragons before.
That's not true. Actually, I keep threatening people with dragon fights. But like I've never actually used the dragon on any of my party members so far.
Okay, fair enough. I've used dragons quite a bit already. So I'm like, all right, something new. Not dragon. We're going to have you fight this contract. And it was also a nice twist because everyone was expecting to go off and fight this dragon at the end. And then when the grand doors open, you found a withered dragon inside. And you're like, oh, she's the contract demon's like, hey, yeah, what's up? This is where I've been getting all my juice from. And
I was actually thoroughly impressed because that contract demon kept cropping up every time you didn't expect him. And I'm like, oh, what the hell? What are you doing here? You know what I mean? Like, and then, you just inputted it. He was like, I was the true final boss all along. And I lost my shit.
So again, like for me, I had an idea of what the ending is, but I was never beholden to it. The ending for me was, this is what the final fight I wanted it to be. But as people adapted, as well as different plot lines came up, I thought to myself, oh my god, this would be even better, because originally the original idea was dragon was captured, dragon had a curse on the family so that each lineage die younger. But I'm like, that was the original plan. But then I thought, would it be better once the contract demon was introduced into the story? I thought, oh, it would be totally better if it was one of those monkey palm situations, and the contract demon said, all right, I'll kill off the lineage, but it's gonna be a very slow process of illness, but with each line of succession, and they'll eventually die off. Once the next heir is like 10 years old and he dies of the illness, then finally they'll be dead, but that'll be like 6-7 generations later. And I was like, that would be great. Yeah, that's the monkey palm on a final boss. And the contract team kind of shows up every so often, as like one of those shady businessmen, but that's super charismatic. That he's like, oh, hey, what's up? I'm no threat. How about you sign this contract? You interested? You interested in signing this contract here? Come on, it'll make your life easier. Sign it. Sign it with yourself. They also brought up one of my favorite lines that you said, Ramon, is that, all right, listen here, buddy. I'll give you my eldest born soul right here, right now. Not my soul, but my eldest born soul.
Yeah.
I'm like, what? You're like, yeah. I haven't talked to my wife about this yet, but like, for my eldest born, I don't have a kid yet, but whenever he's born, you can have him.
I thought it was like, I don't know, man. It was like the something that wasn't real. Yeah. This is like the entire kingdom, right? I was like, oh man, I think I'll be fine. I'll just have 2 kids. Like
2 kids, it'll be fine. The first one,
I'll be fine.
Gets eternally damned. It's fine.
Yeah, it's fine. Like,
as I was saying, this is how things adapted into the story. Was that I didn't have this idea of a contracting, but he became a fun part of the thing, and it became also a great twist at the end, because I had him then reoccurring every so often, because I realized, as I mentioned, it was supposed to be a side story. He was not supposed to be important in this story at all. He was supposed to show up once in a side story, never show up again. But I liked the idea of it so much that I built the story around that idea then. or I shifted the story around to that idea, and I made it fit by just having him again show up. He didn't have to affect each module at all. He kind of shows up and just goes, "Hey, I see you have this like difficult situation or puzzle or whatever you can't get past. I can open the door for you if you sign the dotted line."
Yeah.
And it was just he wasn't much of a threat. He didn't threaten to kill any of them or anything. He just said, "Sign on the dotted." No, all right, well, peace.
I tried.
I'll see you later.
Yeah, and like I think even after all of that and getting to the I guess I call it like the post-credit scene if I had, because I always equate D&D to being like the story to being like a movie where like after the big fight and everyone's kind of wrapping up, like it was like, and then I think we ended the story where it was like shots of our lives like afterwards. It was like the
epilogue of what happened to everyone.
The epilogue, yeah. Right? And then, like I was like we're like sitting there like we closed out on like it's the celebration. I'm there holding like my firstborn child, and I was like, "You're almost to hell!" Like,
I was paternally damned you, man.
Yeah,
I don't know how lucky you are.
Yeah, good thing your dad's so great. Like,
that's the like how I basically ended the story, was because I was able to give you all these epilogues. Partially because every time we finished a session or started a new session, I was like, "Hey, what did your character like?" Like I first took notes of like what you guys were interested in the world, like what each of you individually were interested in the world. And again, the cleric was, constantly trying to convert people into his god. So I went, okay, you'll eventually start off with a crappy church or again a shack that could eventually, if he keeps trying to convert people, well, I can't have him convert normal people because that will be, then he becomes a menace to this, like,
yeah.
If he converts normal people into his madness, then he becomes a menace. But if he converts a bunch of already crazy homeless people into his church, he's kind of now doing a service because he's getting the homeless off the street. He's like,
take care of them
to an area. He's housing them now.
He's
becoming a social service instead. For you, Ramon, you were like, "Oh, I agree with this wizard," and you're like, "Hey," you hinted at it. So I was like, "All right, yeah." The wizard like takes you on because I also need a way for your characters to level up in some way in this world. It made sense for you to level up if you were learning spells and things under the wizard. It made sense for the cleric to level up if he kept communing with his god and converting more and more people to his church of madness.
Yeah. I always kind of wondered that. I don't think I've ever settled that in my mind. It's like, how do wizards just automatically just know the next levels of spells or whatever, right? Like, it's always just like, you just get it, right?
Understand. But yeah, that's how I created this epilogue, because you went. I remember like the whole reason you married that one character, the female NPC character, was that once she was like, "Hey, I'll join you. I'll like just snitch on everything because I have no allegiance to this." You're like, like offhandedly, you're like, "I think I'll marry this girl at some point."
Yeah.
You offhandedly mentioned that. I went, "Yeah, sure, I can do that." Like again, she wasn't supposed to be around the story that long anyway. She kind of just was there, so I'm like, yeah, sure, I could keep her around, like have that be a part of your character's like progression. You try to like court her or something.
Well, it also kind of spoke to like that session. That campaign was so close to my heart because I think the timing of it all, it was like we're just getting out of university, we're just about to start like our real lives.
Yeah.
And like the idea of like having like a family and stuff like that was like more real than ever at that time in my life, right?
Fair.
So and it was just kind of cool to kind of explore it in that aspect. But we probably should get to the outro because Calvin has to edit this video.
Yeah, I wasn't gonna say anything, but
I'll just finish off with like one last capstone to end this campaign.
Mm-hmm.
Listen to the players. They will offhandedly mention certain things, and just make note of it. Just listen to the players of what they say. Whether in character or not in character, they will either offhandedly say something that they're thinking of, or like just again slightly mention something that they don't think. They might not take it seriously themselves. They might just say something offhanded, like Ramon just went, it's like, they might marry this girl or something. Again, offhandedly mention. In my mind I went, yeah, I could do that. Like, if it's not, it's something I can progress your character story, and it's not, world breaking or anything, and it's not too like inconsequential kind of things. Yeah, I could do that, and that's how you eventually progress because you add on these things, and then you have a epilogue for what all of the characters did and where they end up in your world.
Yeah, man. That's so. I kind of want to get to that. That's the part where I'm excited to get to. It's so weird. I'm like, I wanna like have the the moment where it's like, oh man, where's the crew after 5 years or whatever? They save the world, and it's like, I'm on a farm or whatever.
Yeah.
Living my best Thanos life. Anyway, Calvin, go to the outro.
Yeah, no, it's just, I really like the way you've summed that up and just like letting the players, again, tell you what they want to do and then guide you to that ending, that you don't have to like stay beholden to whatever idea you come up with at first. It's more interesting if you make something up with the players, which I guess is the entirety of the narrative of the game story. But yeah, this was a great chat. I think there's probably a lot more that we could say because we did fill up a lot of time here. So maybe we'll do this again sometime. I have no idea. I don't know what we're doing next week or the week after that, but I'm sure we'll figure out something for those episodes.
It was great having you on the thing we do.
Yes.
The podcast, the thing.
Actually, do you want to just like, I know if you want to mention your social medias again, if you want to.
Oh yeah, I guess I have an Instagram, but it's not like anything crazy. It's the point where I don't even remember what the Instagram account's called.
Well, if you remember, I'll link it in the show notes.
It's STEFEN_Hall. It's my name, except for I replaced the V with an F because I thought that was funny.
Okay.
It's really dumb because everyone thinks that's how my name is spelled now. My name is Stephen Haw, and I decided to replace the V with an F, and so it's Stefan_Haw.
Stefan. All right, Stefan.
I thought I was a clever boy.
Go check out his pictures of him in the cosplay, everybody.
Yeah, just scroll down below to see a link to Steven's Instagram. You also see links to our socials on Twitter and Facebook, again at Win with Dice. You'll see a link to our website where you can go check out some exclusive like images and content, or drop a line if you have something interesting you want to say, or hit up our email address if you're feeling real professional about it. Otherwise, just remember to subscribe and, of course, hit that bell so you get a notification every time we upload an episode every Wednesday, which we've managed to do pretty consistently.
That's crazy. Yeah. So yeah.
Steven, thanks again for coming on. I think I might have had a bit of this conversation with Ramon, but I know like you sort of got him going on DMing, and then he did the same thing for me. So there's this like thread, I guess, that traces back to you.
And it's kind of cool because well, I mean, we're gonna keep this podcast is over, I guess, trying to get to the outro. But if any of you guys are still here, it's clear to see that it's weird that this hobby, there's such like a very, very close connection to, someone's DM for them, and they take some stuff from that game and add it to their game, and then the next person adds it to their game. And the flow of ideas, it's the only place to get it is this kind of this genre of playing games. So
so play more games with your friends.
Keep on winning with dice. Shit, I took the outro.
Oh no, you took my catchphrase. Steve, you want to say anything before we end this episode?
No, I think that was good enough to end.
Okay, well then I will a big wind up, and remember to keep on winning with dice. And that's how you do an outro.
That's true. All right, see you guys.
Bye, everybody.